Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our June Northern Region talk. We're delighted to have with us a colleague, a friend of ours from the North West Region branch, Jean Wilson MBE, who we heard about from some of the amazing things that the North Western branch, the RSB, were doing, and were somewhat in awe, to be honest, of some of the activities that were happening over there. And we thought it would be great that there should be a wider audience for them, and we all have the opportunity to listen to what the Northwestern branch and Jean have been getting up to, and her friends over there. We're going to hear from Jean, and then very towards the end, the chair of the branch, Mike Clapham, who's going to talk about the recent work that they've just done in the last few days, in fact, stuff that's hot off the press. So they are based over in the Wyre Estuary, and they've been doing BioBlitz there for a few years now. We'll hand over to Jean. You're going to have to unmute yourself, Jean. We look forward to hearing about what you've all been up to.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Ross and the Northern Branch, for inviting me to give a talk tonight on the activities of the Northwestern Branch. It isn't just me, it's very much a team event, and one of the events that we've been asked to talk about is a BioBlitz. Now, here I'm just going to show you what might be extremely useful if you intend to run a BioBlitz. And it's a guide to running a BioBlitz, which you can download directly from bnhc.org.uk. So that's the British Natural History Consortium, who are the group which coordinate all the BioBlitzes that take place in the UK. Well, I'll just go back there. I was first introduced to what a BioBlitz was by Dr. Richard Small, who was a member of our committee many years ago, possibly 10 years ago, and he moved to Shropshire. He invited the committee of the Northwestern Branch to the Longmynd in Shropshire and suggested that we join the BioBlitz there, which effectively was a 24-hour event where we had to record as many species as we could in a very small country park. So what is a BioBlitz? Well, effectively, we're looking at anything which can live, so any species, and we're trying to record these species within a set period of time. Well, obviously, in some cases, it's just 24 hours, as it was when we were at the Longmynd, but for the BioBlitzes that we've conducted in the Northwest, it's a lot longer than that. And because there are certain constraints in areas where you might be carrying out your BioBlitz, and for us, it's mainly the tide and, of course, people's jobs. And it's people we need to act as coordinators. BioBlitzes were first created, if you like, or developed by a chap called Sam Droge in America in 1996, and the British Natural History Museum have been the coordinators since 2006. So what do you got to do first? Well, the first thing you want to do if you want to carry out a BioBlitz is to find a good site, and choosing your site is quite important. So we chose the River Wyre Estuary. If you don't know anything about the River Wyre, I'll just give you a brief introduction. The River Wyre rises in the Bowland Fells, which is near Abbeystead. It's one of very few rivers that actually is just contained within one county. And of course, that's the Red Rose County of Lancashire. It's approximately 28 miles long, and it enters the sea, the Irish Sea, at the south end of Morecambe Bay at a place called Fleetwood. And on the opposite side to Fleetwood is Knott End. Now, the other thing about the Wyre Estuary Country Park which is where we carry out our BioBlitz, is because it's ideal for a number of reasons. First of all, the whole of the Wyre Estuary is actually a county biological heritage site. But at the Wyre Estuary Country Park, we've got a very enthusiastic team of rangers there who support us in every way. And that's led by a lady called Alison Bowden. There's also plenty of parking space, and there's plenty of green space to carry out any events that we want to carry out. It's also quite familiar to the RSB. Apart from being a biological heritage site, it's also an area of outstanding natural beauty, a triple SI, and is also part of the Morecambe Bay Ramsar site. So we've got our venue. We know where we want to carry out our BioBlitz. So what do we do next? Well, we need some friends because we can't do it alone. So we recruit from many different areas, from the academic world, such as Lancaster University and Blackpool and the Fylde College. We recruit from industry. So we, right next to the Wyre Estuary Country Park, we've got an enormous industrial site, and there are many different types of industry carried out there. Originally, it was ICI, which was in the Imperial Chemical Industry, and that's where they produced PVC, because the chlorine was extracted from the salt seams which were close by. We also recruit from the Wyre Rivers Trust, which is a charitable organisation which cares for the environment of the river. We recruit from IFCA, which is the Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority. So there are local organisations involved as well, such as Fylde Bird Club. But we definitely need the help of Wyre Council, because Wyre Council own and manage the country park. And without them, there would be no BioBlitz. Right, so we've got our site and we've got our partners. So now we need some money, because these events, they don't come free. However, the most valuable asset that we have are the volunteers who take part in the BioBlitz. So where do we get our money from? The 2018 BioBlitz cost approximately £2,000, which sounds an enormous amount of money, but that also included contributions from the Wyre Council by purchasing or hiring marquees for us. So the Royal Society of Biology, in 2018, we applied for the additional branch funding, which was extremely useful, and we were granted £500, which went a long way to helping to, we actually bought some good equipment to help with that, and food and travel are also needed to support a BioBlitz. So the Wyre Rivers Trust, who you can see there, applied to the British Ecological Society for a grant, and we were very successful in getting a grant for almost £2,000. And with that, we've bought visualizers, or I should say the River Trust have bought visualizers and macroscopes and many other things which can help identify species. Right, so now we need people to help to be identifiers and recorders. So nationally, there are a fair number of groups who've, like the RSPB, who if you write to them, they might suggest certain specialists who live in your area. And but also these specialists are invited to come along for the community engagement, which we carry out on the Saturday, to set up their stalls and introduce their groups to the general public. So people like the RSB PB bring in a big event stand, as do the Marine Conservation Society, and we also have the smaller groups exhibiting there as well. Now, there's a group there that you might not recognize. Most of them are self-explanatory, as you can see, but there you can see a group that called Learn. Now, Learn is the Lancashire Environmental Record Network. It is a member of the Association of Local Environmental Record Centres. So every area in Britain will have a record centre. So if you want to carry out a BioBlitz, you will have not the Lancashire, but you will have a local environmental network centre. So do contact them. And there's a gentleman who works at Learn called David Earle, and he's an absolute botanical expert, and he works extremely hard during our BioBlitz to record as many botanical species as he possibly can. Now, obviously, the specialists are excellent in their field, but you don't have to be exceptionally excellent, because we do have technology now. And this can help you, as particularly the amateurs amongst us, well, because we have a number of apps. We use iNaturalist and iRecord, where you can just take photographs of your specimen, and hopefully you will get an identification. However, I did take a picture of a hoverfly this last week, and it did come up as a cactus. So you do have to be, whether my photograph wasn't quite right, I don't know, but there we go. So we created what we call a project on iNaturalist this time in 2021, and it's going to be used by Learn. And on today's note, the records for today, it came up, this project delivered these results. During our 2021 BioBlitz, there were 560 observations, 299 species, 37 observers, and 66 identifiers. Well, that was at midday. I just checked before, and now we've got 400 species. So it's changing all the time as people enter their results from Friday and Saturday's BioBlitz. So here we've got some of our local experts, as it were, and you can see at the top left there we've got Eric. I don't know whether Eric's listening tonight, he may well be, but Eric was unable to join us this time for the 2021 BioBlitz. Eric was awarded the President's Medal in 2020 by the Royal Society of Biology. He's the Vice County Recorder for West Lancashire, and he's also the author of the Flora of North Lancashire, which was a result of 46 years of surveying. However, although he couldn't make it physically to the event, he has been analysing our results. And one of the results, which he informed me about, is very exciting. Now, excuse my pronunciation here, but there was a plant recorded on a disused railway line near the Wyre Estuary Country Park called Trapeoleum ciliatum. It's the only other place that this plant has been recorded, and here we are very proud of this, as Buckingham Palace Gardens. So we have something there in common with Buckingham Palace. And thank you for that, Eric. It was very useful and very interesting. So we've got our site, we've got our experts, and we've got some money. So we now want to tell the world about our BioBlitz. And so in this particular, what we can do is sometimes we can provide posters and postcards advertising what we're doing. And we can also advertise the fact that we've got a celebrity to open the ceremony or to start the ceremony of our very interesting BioBlitz. And some of you may or may not recognise, but here in the centre with the children is a gentleman called Mike Harding. He was also known as the Rochdale Cowboy, and he also presented Folk on 2 for many years. He's a passionate environmentalist, and he was more than happy to make a journey from Settle in Yorkshire to come to Lancashire and open up our BioBlitz. We also forecast our BioBlitz on the RSB website. We use personal letters, and to get schools involved, we use the Eco Schools Coordinator. You should also find that there's one of those in your area as well. And then we go to the planning. So we have 2 days, Friday and Saturday, when there's a lot of community and educational engagement. And on the Friday, as you can see here, we had 6 schools, A to F, and we had 6 activities, all timetabled and programmed from 10:45 to 2:30, with a break for lunch. So let's have a look at what the educational environment and engagement involved. Well, in Blackpool, we're very, very lucky to have a SeaLife centre. And because we live next to the Irish Sea and Morecambe Bay, then the sea is very, very important in children's lives around here. So SeaLife Blackpool, we're going to talk about sharks and rays. And if you look at the picture on the left, you can see at the back, there's a whole heap of mermaids' purses. Most of those mermaids' purses were from thornback rays, which are predominant species within Morecambe Bay. So the SeaLife brought along some of their exhibits, and there you can see Karen holding a jaw. Well, it's actually a model of a white shark's jaw, but obviously we don't get many of those in Morecambe Bay. And you can also see they also talked about crustaceans. So there's a moult there of a lobster and some lobster claws as well. We take the students or the pupils out on a walk, and the Wyre Estuary Country Park has got an absolutely superb salt marsh. You can see the expanse of the salt marsh behind the group of children, and you can see the children on the left looking out across the salt marsh and over the river Wyre. The salt marsh exhibits mosaic zonation, and the children could find, well, they were pointing out how the plants on the salt marsh managed to survive. But the country park as well, behind the salt marsh, which you can see there, was also explored by the children. And then I engaged a local joiner and one of the rangers, also a retired teacher who was head of construction, and every school that day went home with at least 5 or 6 of these bug boxes and bird boxes. So the bug hotels and the bird boxes, and the children absolutely adored building those. All the material was pre-cut, so there was no sewing. It was just a case of gluing and screwing and building their boxes, putting them all together. Now, Mike Clapham, who's going to give you a very brief summary of the 2021 BioBlitz, helped children to take some images of the wildlife in the country park. And here you can see in the outside classroom behind the Riverside room, he set up his little studio. The students or pupils came with their iPads and their mobile phones, and they really took some great images. The small mammals that you can see here were courtesy of Alan Bedford and Hilary Bedford, who did the small mammal survey in the country park. And the small mammals were released later. We didn't hang on to them. They don't tolerate being trapped for very long. The RSB Centre site inside the marquee was run by a gentleman called David Shaw, and what the children were doing there was dissecting owl pellets. Now, fortunately, we live in quite a rural area, and I've got some friends in the farming sector, and they provided owl pellets from barn owls and from tawny owls. And it's a great forensic activity to engage the children with. They really loved that. I also brought in the local art society, which is the Wyre Art Society, and the members of that society were more than happy to help the children do paintings and drawings. We also promoted the Nancy Rothwell Award there for art, so that was a good opportunity. You can see that they've got cases, some Vivaria there, which contain some insects which the children were busy trying to paint and draw. Then we come to the community engagement. Well, it would be nice to think this was just on Saturday, but actually it was only just half an hour after the children had left, or an hour after the children had left to go home, that we then began the community engagement. So the first one that we carried out was the Salt Marsh survey. Now this time, rather than sort of demonstrating activities, we engaged the adults and their families and children in actually doing some surveying. So you can see a full program of events there, going right the way through to the small mammal identification. But during it, on Friday night, it was on till 11:30 with the bat walk and the moth traps, and started at 5 o'clock on Saturday morning with the dawn chorus. Fortunately, it's June, so it's nice and light. So here we go with our community engagement. This is where the experts, who are identified here with their blue caps on, are showing the general public of all ages just exactly what there is and where to find it. This was our marquee, where we could set up the exhibits for the public. And the marquee was hired by Wyre Council for us. So it was our biodiversity marquee. So looking inside the marquee, you can see it's a great venue. And we've got lots of things going on here. They're just unpacking all the material here to start building the bug hotels and the bird boxes again, because we did those with children on the Saturday. And we also had the local GP practice, and they were concentrating on healthy heroes. So you can see that the children there are looking at diet and exercise. And over on the right-hand side, we've got a GP who actually carried out blood pressure checks and percentage oxygen checks, I think that's the expression, and checking to see if anybody who wanted a quick health check was seen during that Saturday. Now, it's important to note that that the lady in the red cardigan is the chairman of the patient participation group, and she went to London to represent her practice, the patient participation group at Thornton, and they actually won they came first in a national award for patient participation. And she highlighted the activities that went on during the BioBlitz. Those were also highlighted when the CQC came to Thornton practice, and they received an outstanding award. So we can give ourselves a pat on the back here for helping these other groups to achieve great things. Right, so I'll just have a look quickly through some of the things that went on the Saturday. Nature walks and surveys. So over there you can see it's a saline reservoir which is on the industrial site, and there we found lots of huge eels. You can see the measure there. I haven't put a picture of the eel up, but there we go. And you can see the mud of the salt marsh, and there's a gentleman there kneeling down. I think that's Malcolm Evans, and he's recording hoverflies. We've got Tom recording fish, and then that's David Earle, the botanist from Learn, who's addressing the group who've gone out on a botanical survey. Again, the nature and art, but also down there on the left-hand side, we've got the local bee club, and they brought in some bees and some honeycomb and showed the public what could be done. But the most important thing, of course, is the fact that we need to collect data. So we need records and we need surveys. And during the 2018 BioBlitz, we recorded 765 species. There were 100 volunteers, and there were 1,000 visitors recorded. Now you might think, well, why do we keep records of that? Well, because this is evidence that this sort of activity is very successful, and it also helps to get one going the next time we want to apply for any money. The statistics collected help to justify our existence, if you like. So what do we do with all the data? Well, first, we actually record it and send it to places like the Bristol to learn, to the British Trust for Ornithology. It's kept by the Wyre Rivers Trust, it's kept by Wyre Council, and now it's kept by iNaturalist and iRecord. This data can actually be used by planners when it comes to looking at areas where perhaps they shouldn't be building or removing pond life and ponds. You can find a full list of the records on the Wyre River Trust website, which is www.wyreriverstrust.org. I believe this PowerPoint presentation is going to be kept on record, so you'll be able to get that from the PowerPoint itself. So these are some of the marine surveys we carried out. We've got a pipefish, and I think that's a place. So fight netting, seine netting, push netting, they were all carried out by people. The gentleman with the flat cap is from IFCA, or a retired IFCA member, and Steve really was very, very knowledgeable about the bay, because it can be quite treacherous out there. So you need to know exactly where you're going to go and walk and take samples. So, as I said, the results are recorded. We produce a booklet called BioBlitz in 2018. I'll show you a copy of that at the end, but these are some of the pages from that booklet, which tells you all about the results and the people who were involved. Now, there's a quick summary. How many books, school children, bird boxes and species recorded. It says 700 plus, but it was 765. And so we keep a record of the results. And we also make sure that we look after our surveyors, because they need good food and they need tender loving care. And so our volunteers, here you can see our secretary Liz in her blue jacket and with her friend Helen, and they're preparing the food for this last Saturday. And they, well, I can say that the surveyors they ate exceptionally well. So for 2 days, food and drink was provided, and very much appreciated. I always get lots of comments on how much they enjoyed the food. So now, what we had planned after 2018 was that in 2020, we would have, oh, beg your pardon, an online streaming event, all right? However, just a minute, sorry. And this would be in preparation for 2021 for the BioBlitz. The online streaming event was actually replacing a series of day lectures and day events when people would come along to learn about invertebrates. So we were going to concentrate on invertebrates in 2020 and have short one-day courses where we'd look at different orders of invertebrates, the Diptera, the Hymenoptera, the Coleoptera, and so on. Anyway, because of COVID, we couldn't do that. So we thought, well, maybe we'll do an online streaming event. by which we could look at the way in which invertebrates were collected and identified. However, the idea of online streaming was a little bit too onerous, trying to get the timing exactly right. Trying to get insects to behave wasn't very successful. So instead, we produced some videos. Now here you can see Dr. Alan Bedford with his hand in his insect trapping net, and we have produced a video about invertebrates. So invertebrate collection methods and identification and recording. So we use this video this year for training up people to help collect and identify the species at the 2021 BioBlitz. We also have another YouTube video, which you can all find on the RSB website, which was produced by Mike Clapham, and that was photographing wildlife. So we've got two videos there, one collection, identification and recording, and the other one which is photography. We've got two more in the can, as it were, and the two in the can concentrate on the crustacea, which is given by Dr. Mark Worms, who gave a talk previously on echinoderms, and we have the order Diptera given by Alan and the order Coleoptera given by Hilary Bedford. So we've got some more, which will be more videos which are ready to be released very soon. We're just going through the editing process now. So that's me finished now. So I don't know what I do now. I think it's over to Mike now to give a summary of the 2021 BioBlitz, which wasn't officially an RSB event, but you can't keep biologists away, so they were all there.
Over to you, Mike.
Okay, is it working as it should?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, I'm just going to pause that for a minute because I've set this up as a slide show, and it takes about 5 minutes, so I won't be keeping you too long. But it starts with David Earle here, early one on Friday morning, finding a surprise plant, which was hoary cinquefoil. That's what it is, hoary cinquefoil. So David was very chuffed to be able to find this. And the significant point is it's in an area of dense grass growing outside the NPL industry site, which Jean talked about. And it was growing in one small area where Graham, who Jean mentioned, one of the wardens at the centre, was strimming. So, but for the strimming activity, this quite rare cinquefoil wouldn't be there. And all I'm going to do is just allow this slideshow to run, which should be doing now, and point out the various helpers that came to help us do the surveys. We had people, bird experts there looking over the Wyre Estuary, which you can see there in the salt marshes. We went down, starting at the old Thornton railway station with David Earle, you see there. Got to work straight away, pointing at spleenworts and wall roos and various plants growing on the brickwork. But of course, our main interest was actually on the railway lines. And here we see Graham using iNaturalist on his phone, and it was never caught out. Even with this, just a picture of this grass, it came up with the right species. The flowers there, fox and cubs. Another flower we found, Scarlet Pimpernel. It identified them all spot on. So if you don't use it, I've never used it before, but I was so impressed. Here's David in amongst the flowers and foliage. And this is the rare exotic that he found. It's called Tropolium ciliatum. This is what Jean was mentioning, is also extant in Buckingham Palace. So how it got on this railway, we don't know. It could be that somebody's growing it in a local garden and it's just a garden escape. But it was covering quite a substantial area on the old railway track, about 20 feet by 6 feet. And of course, this was the difficulty negotiating the rail track, as it was covered in blackberries, rubus species. Of course, there was a lot of internal work as well in the labs. Here we've got two people identifying organisms found in the pond. And so we've got the requisite identification books and microscopes, and all the wildlife was poured back dutifully into the pond, so it all went back home. And of course, we had a lot of marine species to identify. This is the marine biology team. Mark Woombs here sat in the foreground, and again, Mark Woombs and Tom identifying various things that they got from trawling and such in the bay. And also taking pictures down the microscope so that we could look at them and identify them more closely later on. An example of some of the samples in a specimen dish. And Jean, with one of her colleagues, trying to identify what look like, are they copepods, Jean? You'll shout at me if I've got that wrong. I'm not a marine biologist. And of course, Jean mentioned Alan and Hilary, who are mammal sampling experts. But also insect sampling experts. Here they found some tent caterpillars, which we were quite fascinated to see, all the wriggling caterpillars in there. Alan here demonstrating the use of sweep net, and we'll see how he actually extracts the insects that he's caught from above the vegetation as he sweeps the net, just glancing across the tops of the vegetation. Then he dives into it. Gets himself into some right old poses. He's in there with a pooter, extracting the insects. And as I say, he gets in some rather unusual positions as he tries to find all the various insects in there. And then there he is showing them to the team. In fact, that's Jean there. And then we've got a close-up. You can see it's full of flies and other insects. And demonstrating the well-known bash a bush under with an umbrella underneath and see what you find. Again, pooter employed to extract the insects. And Alan also demonstrated that if you feed CO2 into the pooter, it knocks the insects out. So you've got a better chance to identify them closely by putting them on your hand or wherever you want to put them to identify them. In fact, some of these flies, as he was talking to us, actually got up and flew off. So the CO2 didn't actually do them any damage at all. And he demonstrated all of these, this equipment to some volunteers that were with us, and they went out and tried the sweep nets and identifying insects and so on, and with the books that Alan provided there. And of course, the mammal survey. Alan used various traps to catch the little creatures. We mainly caught bank voles on this occasion, but they were all sexed and weighed and went into the record, marked so that they wouldn't be recorded twice, and then, of course, set free without any harm at all. Water traps were also used, as you'll see in a second, catch hundreds of flies and other insects attracted by the yellow colour and just drown in a little dish of water which has a little bit of fairy liquid or similar, other brands are available, which kills them, and then you can identify them. And here we are with David again on day 2. He was very excited to tour the old ICI plant, which has now got various activities on it, including this, which is a power plant utilising the power coming from the windmills out in Morecambe Bay. So this is where the power goes before it goes into the grid. And here we've got David exploring the scene. And actually, have I missed? Is it the next one? You can see here, there were several pools in the site, and Jean fought hard and long to get the site planted with reeds. So all the water is massively planted with reeds, thanks to Jean and her team and the Wyre Rivers Trust. And also on the site, well, I found this quite interesting. This is just to mention one of the species that were found. This is a common broom rape. The botanists amongst you will know, of course, that this is a parasitic plant. So the leaves around are not belonging to the flower here. They belong to the possible hosts for this parasite. So it's a parasitic flower. And Graham was using iNaturalist. I think we've got it there. He is. He's holding the flower, and he's got his phone in his hand. And iNaturalist came up with it again flawlessly. Came up with the right species. And here's David again, photographing one of these rare rubus that he finds. He found rubus armipotens at another place, not this where he is now, which apparently should only be in the south of England. And here he's photographing red-styled rubus. Can't remember the proper name, but again he said this is unusual in Lancashire. And here it was. There was just one, I think, one example of it on this railway line. Red-styled rubus, one of 300 at least types of rubus that he will be able to identify. And then at the end of the day on Saturday, I spent a very pleasant afternoon with Malcolm here, who is a hoverfly expert. He's taught himself, he's been an expert on moths and butterflies, but has eventually settled on hoverflies. So here he is identifying, recording the species that we found out there near the estuary. And of course, when he finds them, sometimes he needs a hand lens to examine them closely to identify them. And he also tells me that sometimes he has to take them home and examine details of the anatomy that, you know, are more difficult to see in a tube, and he might need to take them home and put them on the microscope. So and you can see there's a tiny hoverfly, some of them are quite small. And some of them are quite big, which made it easy for me to photograph. So I've got a couple here, which gives an example of what we were identifying and recording on the day. And that was a sort of a whistle-stop tour of the activities and the volunteers and the experts that we had on last Friday and Saturday at Stanner Country Park, contributing to the massive collection of species numbers that Jean has referred to. Did she say we're up to 400, and I dare say it'll get a lot higher. So that's the end of that. So thank you very much.